Okay, so we are on the air live. Hi, Nilima.
Good
How are
morning, Betsy.
Hi. So for those of you joining us live and watching the recording later, I'm Betsy Sobiech. I'm with Tiara International, and this week we are exploring Shakti Leadership with Nilima Bhat. She's in Chicago. We're very lucky to have her in Chicago the week of her book launch. The book is Shakti Leadership, Balancing Feminine, Embracing. I would say balancing, but it's embracing feminine and masculine power in business. And Nilima is actually on this hangout from the Conscious Capitalism Conference that's also happening here in Chicago. She co-wrote her book, Shakti Leadership, with Raj Sisodia, one of the founders of Conscious Capitalism. And he's there at the conference. Nilima is there at the conference. We have colleagues, partners, and clients at the conference. So thank you for making time in your day to connect with us from your hotel in Chicago as part of the conference. And I think that might be my entree question for you is what is conscious capitalism for anybody joining who might not know, and how is Shakti leadership birthed from this conscious capitalism movement?
Great question. Conscious capitalism is a movement that has taken over many parts of America and around the world to essentially rehabilitate capitalism as usual, which seems to have really lost its way and gone pretty. It's got such a bad rep. So Raj Sisodia, who's my co-author on this book, Shakti Leadership, he is one of the co-founders of this movement, along with a bunch of amazing leaders, business leaders like John Mackey of Whole Foods. John and Raj wrote the earlier book, Conscious Capitalism, which is a runaway bestseller. And it's almost like a spiritual experience for business people and executives, and they come back and they show their very deeply underlined copies to Raj and John. I saw that happen yesterday. Essentially, Raj did a research on what makes great companies succeed without marketing, and what is it that these companies do, and how do they. He realized there are many companies out there who spend millions of dollars, trillions of dollars in marketing and get zero returns. On the other hand, there are some companies who choose not to spend money on marketing, and yet they are very profitable, successful, loved companies. So his research, discovered 28 such companies, and that book is called Firms of Endearment. And the four tenets that he pulled out of what they had in common were they each has beyond profit. Profit ensues because they made the world a better place in some form or shape through their product or service. The second tenet that these companies had in common was they were built on conscious cultures. There was a lot of love and care. It was palpable in those shop floors and workplaces. There was not that usual fear and win-lose competition and aggression and passive aggression around. There was genuine love and care in the system, and people enjoyed coming to work and were engaged and were cared for and felt cared for. The third tenet of conscious capitalism is stakeholder integration. These companies have the ability to plot their value chain from their smallest vendor to their last customer or client and make sure that everyone wins in that mix. Everyone then feels invested in this company sustaining itself because they are part of that and they get sustained as well. In some way, they get value. And the fourth and perhaps the most conscious capitalism is these companies have been built and kept going by very conscious leaders. Leaders who are very self-aware people, who have some kind of personal practice, who are aware of their inner scape. They know leadership is an inside job. They have high EQ, they have high SQ, spiritual intelligence, They know their story, they know where they've come from, they know why they are going to work each day, they are aware of the decisions they are making and of those decisions. And they for that. They're very context aware. So these four tenets, higher purpose, conscious cultures, conscious leaders, and stakeholder integration, these four tenets together are like the four pillars of a conscious company. Mm-hmm. Now, where does Shakti leadership come in? Of these four pillars, the one, in a way, the starting point for an individual would be, how do I become a conscious leader? That's one thing I can control. Everything else I'm going to rely on others, but becoming a conscious leader is about me and it starts with me. So a modelship was required and would have been very useful is what I felt when I've been part of the movement for a while now, since 2000, when they launched their first event in India. So I spoke to Rao. My parallel journey in this was, I come from a background of corporate communications. I spent 10 years in the corporate world. I had a kind of crisis moment of search for meaning and purpose, and feeling very hollow and empty, that this day job isn't feeding my soul. Where do I go with this? And that's when I went into yoga and Vedanta, and I took 10-12 years out, almost like a recluse and a hermit in her monastery, and really got into the principles of yoga, lived it, understood what it means to make the journey to awakening and to come into one's own. And being a woman and being an Indian woman and being my mother's daughter, I also had to come into my power and my maturation by working through my role and my reality as a woman. And I realized for a woman to come into her leadership, she actually journeys quite differently. And there are these dual energies at work, that all the leadership models, including many self-awareness awakening models, are very male and masculine and made by men for men. And as a woman, I actually came at it quite differently. So I realized any leadership framework has to include the way a woman would make her journey to leadership. And understanding the masculine qualities that are needed in leadership, but also understanding the feminine qualities that are needed to bring that higher, which is going to solve the crises and the problems we are faced with today. That's how the model for Shakti leadership came together. And I said to Raj, let's write this book, because the conscious capitalism movement needs a model for conscious leadership, and it perhaps also needs a model that is resonant with women as well as men. One of the conscious capitalism movement is quite a love fest. Everyone loves each other. There's such good energy. But one thing that we hear time and again can be something of a voice club. And so I said to Raj, women need to be included. We need to hear their voice. Feminine needs to be honored, included, validated, noticed. So that's what this book is about.
That's wonderful. You said a lot of things there, and a couple I want to highlight. One is that when you think about the conscious capitalism movement and everything it stands for, I do think we often hear that question of how. If I'm a leader of a company, if I'm running a business that I want to be a conscious business, and in a way, Shakti leadership for an individual leader is a framework for them to become a conscious leader. That's something that anybody control. Any role that they play in an organization, they can work on leading their lives from a place of consciousness. And Shakti leadership provides a framework and a model to do that. And it is also a place where women can find themselves, because one of the things that you do in the book is you compare, you put side by side the hero's journey, which is an archetypal male journey of how someone grows as a leader, grows into their own power, with the heroine's journey, which is how a female grows into their own power. So even though Shakti leadership and embracing both male and female power in business is an integrated model and it works for any person, it's not just for women. There's something about the journey and the metaphor that really is designed by women for women so they can find themselves in the story, in the model, in the process, maybe more completely than some of the other leadership books that are out there. Would you say that makes sense? Is that what you're saying?
That's a very beautiful summary, Betsy. You got it. You got it. That women and men eventually have to get to the same place of psychological wholeness, where where your gender doesn't matter. You have access to both masculine and feminine qualities of the mature kind. But to get there, you journey differently. A man has his kshetra or domain that he would journey through, and a woman has her domain that she journeys through. They both meet at the same place, but they journey different terrains. And those terrains are as much internal terrains as they are external terrains.
Mm-hmm.
It's very exciting because it's a different experience. We are born in different bodies, and these bodies have different, physiologies. And we are also born in cultures which have segregated roles for the genders. So whether we like it or not, we make the journey through very different terrains.
Mm-hmm.
And that's beautiful. It's a different experience. Like going to Disneyland and saying, I did the Pirates of the Caribbean, and well, this one did It's a Small World after all. So they're both rides, and they're both exciting, and they're different.
Yeah. And when you think about the model, so there is a framework in Shakti leadership that you guide people through. There's the journey, because our role as growing in our own lives, growing as leaders, owning our power seems like it really is never complete. With each milestone in our personal human journey, there's probably another phase of leadership development. So you really do use the journey as an access to wherever you are is perfect, and however you need to grow next is great, and it's a journey. So know that you're on a journey. I think the other components that really speak to me from your model are the mastery key, which is presence, and that has to do with how someone can access their true power. And then you talk about wholeness, flexibility, and congruence as the capabilities. So when I think about the Shakti framework, I think of that the presence, which is your access to Shakti, which I would love for you to talk about first, and then knowing you're on a journey as far as becoming whole, flexible, and congruent through each stage of your life. So maybe paint your picture of what is the overview of the model, and then just start with sharing a little bit more about that entree point of presence and what you mean by power.
Yeah. So just a little backstory to that, which is I realized very soon growing up that this whole game was about power. Everyone seemed to look at each other, and if you were to be of, if you had to have any substance in the world, or if you had to have any validation, any sense of worth, then it was how much power did you have? And so it was all about gaining power, politics coming into power. Business is about making money so that you can have more power. So it's always about power. And I realized power is such a fundamental fuel. It's the one thing you need. I mean, if I don't have my next breath, I die. So in the same way, once I have my next breath, the next thing I need is the power to move and act and take that one step forward to survive another day, right? So it's really like saying, here is this fantastic Mercedes-Benz car, and then, but there's no gas in it, there's no fuel in it. So everything we are comes to naught, comes to nothing, if we don't have the in it to move it. And that is power. And everything that we value is, is some kind of proxy for that. And we think, oh, if I have some more money, or if I have more privilege, if I have more of something, then maybe I'll have more power. And it's as primal as that it's a prerequisite for life to exist and to keep going and to grow and evolve and make the most of existence, So this game is about power, and then I'm actually playing a very dysfunctional power game. They would end up playing win-lose power games. This whole thing of I need to pull some power from someone else. There's a sense that it's limited. There isn't enough to go around. And therefore, I need to grab as much as I can for myself. Can we put a pause? I think there is someone at the door, or is it
Quick pause. Hang on just one second. Go ahead and you can, and I'll pause the broadcast.